everybody, and welcome to the Everything Voiceover Podcast. My name is Justin D. Torres. The Everything Voiceover Podcast is brought to you by the Voice Realm, where only professional voice actors are listed. All right, today's episode of Everything Voiceover Podcast, we're going to be talking about webinars. Be wary of webinars, I think I'll call it. And first off, I've been seeing a lot of webinars being posted on all these different sites and newsletters that I get all the time, and especially through Facebook. And it's not limited to voiceover; it's through all things like photography or motivational stuff and everything like that. And it's been popping up, and especially during summertime, because everyone's curious, everyone's got free time, and they want to start learning skills. So you're going to see a lot of webinars pop up, especially for voiceover. And some are pretty interesting, but the majority are either promising something that they can't really pull off, or just trying to sell you on something. So here's a couple of, they might be mind-blowing facts about webinars unless you've done a few of them, but here's a couple of really interesting facts about webinars, so that maybe when you think about what you want to do or what classes you want to take or what webinars you want to take, you might think about this beforehand. And I promise you there's some information here that you should definitely take into consideration. First off, what is a webinar? I'll get through it really quickly. It's a web seminar where you're watching someone else essentially try to teach you something through Skype within a 2 to 3 hour period. That's it. This is different than an online class because some online classes have interaction or they have quizzes and stuff like that. This is not really that. This is just you listening to someone give a seminar online, and because 80 to 90% of these webinars are just one-off classes. One day, 2 to 3 hours, sitting down in front of your computer doing your thing. So that's what a webinar is. Now, number one, here's a good fact that you should listen up for. One-off seminars have a tendency, not all, but a lot of them, a lot of the time, they have a real tendency to just be ads for other things or attempts to sell you on something much larger, especially the free seminars. Oh my God, the free seminars are the worst. I took this weird seminar about photography because I was just curious about what it was, because I was having such trouble trying to take pictures, and this guy gave me like 3 things. He was like, I'm going to teach you 3 things that will improve your photography right off the bat. And then towards the end, he's like, I've got this other class that's this 12-hour class that should be worth $2,000. And I'm going to take half off today for $1,000. And then just if you sign up for like the next 10 minutes, it'll be $99.99. Oh, but I'm only going to take 10 people. And it's only for the people who stuck here for this seminar. And I was just like, oh, God. I was just rolling my eyes thinking, like, why did I sign up for this? The old call to action, which just punches you in the face. Oh, I hate it. Most of the time, they're introducing like a PDF or a class, or they're introducing themselves to a coaching session. Because 90% of the time, when you go into these classes at the end, the students will come up and be like, how do you coach? And the reason why they're doing that is because they didn't get enough information, and they're like, I think you know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I realized that this was not to teach me to know what I was doing. This is just kind of like this is how much I know what I'm doing. So maybe I should just pay you more money to help me be more like you. And it sucks. And word to the wise, free seminars, you can take them. Just know you're going to be sold to pretty hard at the end, especially if they want to make you like regret your time. Oh, I hate it. Number 2, another huge pet peeve that I have of webinars that I hate is that if the person running it spends more than 5 to 10 minutes on who they are. Oh my God. This happens a lot. I listen to a lot of motivational stuff, and you have a tendency to spend like 10 minutes on who they are because they're trying to inspire you to see that, like, oh, I was just a regular guy and then I figured it out, and that's cool. But if you're paying for a webinar, just kind of get it over with. If you're spending 10 to 20 minutes talking about your life, I don't care I don't care how you got to where you are. I want to know the information. I want to know what I can use right now. And sometimes it feels like it's just a ploy because they don't have that much information to give you, or worse, they aren't going to give you the information. They're just kind of build up what they want to give you, but you're going to have to pay more for the actual information. So if you're sitting there for 15 minutes listening to, let me tell you a little bit about who I am, which I've done that for one of my first classes. I tried to keep it as quick as possible because people don't care. People don't care. And most of the time I'd be like, hey, if you want to know who I am, just look me up and you can figure out all the information. No problem. I don't want to waste everybody's time here by talking about it. Number 3, webinars suffer from all one-off class problems. They are not meant to be personal. They're not for growth. They're not for coaching. They're not for individuals. They are just generally sending out information that people might be able to use. They have no idea who you are. They can't be knowledgeable of who you are, and they can't give you any real recommendation that you can use right away. They can give you tools that worked for them, which is like totally good, totally fine. But in order for them to actually give you personal growth and to give you specific information, they have to give you an actual class. They have to coach you, which brings us back to the whole point of the first one, selling something. They have to sell you something. Now, here's the thing that not very many people know, but a majority of the information in webinars can likely be gleaned from the person's blog or website. Tactics and strategies usually end up coming to light in interviews with these people. They usually end up coming to light in their blogs and stuff because, the presenter has went around and they've been interviewed and they've had a website. There's some sort of presence that they are giving out on a constant basis. And, you could probably glean 90% of the information. Now, there may be a few secrets that aren't foolproof, that they've kept to themselves, that they're trying to only give to the people that are really good, but those probably aren't going to go out to the webinar people. They're probably going to go out to the people who take the actual classes, or maybe their coaching sessions. But there's not that many huge secrets out there anymore. If you're just willing to look, you're probably going to find everything you need to know, especially about this person's webinar, if you just look. So before you go signing up for a 3-hour webinar, do a little research and see if the information is readily available. Maybe put in their name and say one piece of information, or be like, things you need to know this person, and see if something pops up. The one mini class that I taught literally is available on my YouTube channel, on the Everything Voiceover YouTube channel. It's right there. It's not really a secret. It's readily available for everyone to go to. And, sometimes people need the one-on-one-ness of it, but I've never done a webinar. Never. The technical weirdness of it is it blows my mind, Now might be a good time to say that the Everything Voiceover Podcast is brought to you by the Voice Realm, where only professional voice actors are listed. Now, here's another weird thing about webinars, is that the Q&A sessions just drain my life. They drain my soul every time it happens. I've done it a million times, and we all do it. And I've been one of the people who has totally sidetracked an entire webinar at a desperate attempt to get some kind of information. We all go to a webinar, and they're all different. We all have little problems, and we all have extremely specific questions that only pertain to you, that start with something like, oh, I've been auditioning a lot, and I've found that, blah, 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 blah. Do you think I should, blah, 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 blah? Once again, we all need to realize that if you have to explain your situation to a teacher before asking the question, then you fully realize that they have no idea who you are and where you are at, and are just hoping that they might shed a little insight into it. And that's fine, but if you have to set it up with this huge spiel of three paragraphs, which I have done entirely, and 90% of the time, 99% of the time, the teacher has never given me information that helped. Never. And why? Because they have no idea who I am. They have zero idea who I am. However, every teacher at every webinar will be careful if there are Q&A sessions. Sometimes they're not. Every teacher will be very careful to give you a piece of information that you can use, but combine it with an addendum that gets them, that realizes that they have no idea who you are. For example, someone might say, hey, what's a good setting that I should use for my equalizer on Audacity? And the person might be like, well, I tend to make the room sound as good as possible. And then, I barely use the equalizer, so maybe I'll bump up the gain just a little. So that's a great answer. But then the guy realizes, oh, I have no clue who I'm telling this to. They could have messed up everything. They could have a horrible mic. So they might say something like, however, without knowing your studio mic or preamp setting or listening to it, it's kind of tough to gauge the answer. And that way the questioner can have an answer that may or may not work. And it's totally fine because they kind of helped. Ugh. Now, the few interactive webinars that I've been to where they actually have you do like an audition or something through Skype or something like that. Oh, those are wrought with technical difficulties. I mean, they are a rarity, and that very, very rarely do people even do that nowadays. Because, and that the gist of that is just that people have different computers, people have different microphones, people have technical problems are everywhere. You almost have to say that like every webinar starts 20 minutes late with problems. I mean, there's this one class I'm taking right now where the guy starts by being like, "Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me? Is it? Can you see me? Can you see me? I'm right here. Looks like we are going to start. Okay, it looks like everyone. It's just, I hate it. Such a waste of time." But those interactive webinars are those are the times when you can actually interact. You can be like, oh, I'm going to audition for this person. I'm going to show that we're going to start working on the actual craft of voiceover. However, wouldn't it be great if you could use your actual voiceover mic and not your iPhone mic or not your computer mic? But technically, that's an insanely weird technical miracle to get that done. You have to use different types of inputs and outputs. You got to put your ASO input to this place, to the auxiliary, and the auxiliary goes out. And I consider myself a pretty technically proficient person. That is really hard. That is really hard to do. I can get Source Connect Standard to work perfectly, but this, if you try and make me be able to Skype into using my voiceover mic, can't do it. I'm so out of it, and I'm pretty good at what I do. So it's, 90% of the time you don't see very many interactive webinars because it's not really worth the effort. It's technically a huge pain in the butt. Sorry for the plosive. Pain in the butt. And here's another thing. Podcasts are kind of like webinars without the payment. These people could easily, and this is going to sound weird, but every webinar could easily be just recorded and then sent out to people and maybe say, here's $35. These are my strategies. But, they don't have a meal ticket from city to city to be able to teach. And, if you are able to interact with them individually and you're in the room with them and they're coming up and they're putting you in front of the class and they're having you read, then the value is there. The value is there because you are going to get better personally. But for these webinars where there's no interaction whatsoever, could probably just record it and then just give it out to people. It's really not that big of a deal. And in conclusion, first of all, I apologize if this sounded very negative. It's not. It's like I've done a crap ton of webinars, and they all have the same problem over and over again. It's that, there's no real secrets out there, In conclusion, the fact that I have a podcast and tutorials all over the internet doesn't go without a feeling of irony that I'm just giving away stuff for free. But, it's like, if I wanted to go out and take classes, I'd probably have to tell people beforehand, all this information is in the podcasts. All this information is in the things. The only reason why I would give a class anyway is just to do individual coaching from person to person to try and get them individuals better at individual things. Because otherwise, just listen to the stuff, it's all there. Because I see these people putting up the webinars over and over, same different, maybe they'll do like a little bit of a different niche, and they're just trying to get more money out of more voiceover actors, and it just, and they're not terribly informative. What I like to do is I listen to podcasts and I have a little piece of paper down there and I try and gain 5 pieces of information that I can actually use. And you see people, you hear podcasts, and this is a podcast right now. There might be like a couple of pieces of information, 3 or 4 pieces of information that you could actually use. Like, for example, make sure that you research people before you take a webinar. Yes, free webinars have a tendency to be selling points. So maybe don't do those, or do those, but make sure that you don't get sucked in to the payment thing, And maybe the assumption that you can do a Skype class but still have the same quality of use your voiceover mic. It's probably not doable and probably not a feasible option technically, unless you're really good at audio work. So there's pieces of information that are on every podcast that are worth using. What you should look out for is classes in person with teachers over multiple weeks, where you're going to be critiqued and get individual, coaching. It's worth the money. It's worth the money at that point, because you are going to grow by the craft of voiceover. Especially if those coaches are good, or if they're awesome coaches that are well reviewed, or they're casting directors. Do your research, and not in their website. You want to try and, here's a good thing, if you are curious about taking coaching classes, post in the voiceover groups, post that I'm thinking about taking coaching classes with I'd like people to direct message me if they've had personal interaction with this person, if they have been coached by this person, and what their feelings are. Please, and here's a big thing, in parentheses, or big, not parentheses, in big caps, say, please do not reply or post on this post. Just direct message me. Because 90% of people are going to just chime in being like, I heard this guy was blah, blah, this. It's like, you want people who have actually worked with them. You don't want people who have heard stuff. And if they have heard stuff, if someone's like, I heard this about him, it's like, who have you heard it from, and can I get their information so I can talk to them individually? So keep an eye on your money and your time before you do that webinar filled with things like, oh, let me tell you about me and where I got to, where I was from, or pointless Q&As that make no sense whatsoever, or ads for coaching classes, that end at the end. Take the time to research the person giving it out and see if they haven't already just said everything that they were going to say. Okay? This has been Wary of Webinars from the Everything Voiceover Podcast. My name is Justin D. Torres. The Everything Voiceover Podcast is brought to you by the Voice Realm, where only professional voice actors are listed. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great night.